Hey, welcome back. This is the yellow belt level of the Craftsmaster Dice Shooting Program. In this level, we're going to try and concentrate on continuing our white belt level stuff. So if you haven't done it yet, please go back and review the white belt program and go through and complete it before moving on to the yellow belt. But in the yellow belt, what we're going to do is we're going to actually be throwing the dice now, and we're going to be working on our release. So in other words, how can we throw the dice down the table and try to get them so they go smoothly through the air, nice and square without a wobble, and they stick together and they land hopefully somewhere at the end of the table. The yellow belt level is going to be 10 sessions long. We're going to start each yellow belt session off with our warm-ups that were reviewed in the white belt level. So again, if you haven't done this, so make sure you go back and review that. And then we're going to start off with our review of our white belt stuff. So we're going to work on our dice grips. You're going to go for 10 different repetitions with our dice grip. So get into your preferred dice grip. Then you're going to do your drop test. Do it at least 5 times during each session. And then we're going to work on setting our dice. In the white belt level, we use the hard way set, which is a 5-4-5-4 dice set. In the yellow belt, we're going to add in 2 more dice sets. We're going to add in the 1-2-2-3 dice set. And we're also going to add in the 5-4-2-3 dice set, which is the all 7 set. Look in the top right side of this video and I'll leave cards to each of those videos that'll talk about those specific dice sets. So in the yellow belt level, what we're going to do is we're going to actually stick 2 dice together so we can use that as a practice tool, and it's called a barrel dice. And check this cutout here and I'll show you how I did that. I use 2 different color dice. I use a red dice and a blue dice. And we're going to set it up with the hardway set. We're using 2-sided tape or double-sided tape here to stick the dice together. So all we're going to do is we're just going to rip off a piece. And I'm going to put it on the edge of one of the dice here. Just stick it down good. Rip off a second piece. And we'll put it on the other edge here and make sure it's not hanging over on the sides. We'll trim off the end pieces here in just a second. Okay. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the blue dice. So we're going to put tape on both sides of the dice. Okay, and all we're going to do is we're just going to lay it on edge here. And we're going to make sure that the numbers are showing here. The same numbers are showing on the same side. And we're just going to square it up so that way it's stuck together tight. Okay, and then we'll take a little utility knife and we're just going to trim that tape off so that way there's nothing hanging over the edge. And there we go. Dice are nice and square. Tape is set up straight and it makes a little barrel thing. The nice thing about using this tape here now is that way we can take it off at a later date if we want to. Or we can just kind of use it together. But the reason we're taping it is up so that way we can practice our throws. Now this is going to throw the weight of the dice off a little bit, but that doesn't matter right now because at this level we're just checking to make sure that we throw the dice without a wobble, that we're actually throwing it square to the wall, we're throwing it straight down the table. In the Craftsmaster Journey Dice Shooting Program, we're going to actually start off with either the stick left 1 position or the stick right 1 position. So that should be our preferred starting throwing position when you begin this program. We're going to start the yellow belt program here in our preferred position. I go on stick 1 left, which is my preferred position. And we're going to use our dice that are stuck together. So what we're going to do is we're going to grip them. And then we're going to set up and we're going to verify that our dice are square in a table. And how we do that is we actually line up on a line. You can use one of many different lines, whatever's most comfortable for you. For me, my throwing line is right along the pass line here, the one closest to me. And the reason you use a line is so that way when you throw it down the table, you can try to keep it straight. which we'll cover more in the orange belt level on how and why we do that. But we're going to square up the dice and we're going to throw them down the table. And I don't care how far they go. I don't care if they hit the wall. If you don't get to the wall, I don't care if they go too far and hit the wall first. The main goal of the yellow belt level is to get the dice down so they could throw in unison and they can throw down square and they go down evenly across the table. We want to make sure they don't have a wobble, in other words. And that's what the nice thing is with the barreled dice, or the dice that are stuck together, is that we actually have it set up so you can see if they do wobble through the air. So in other words, what we're going to do is when we throw the dice here, try not to do the traditional pendulum swing where you swing it back and then you throw the dice. We're actually going to start with the dice at the table and we're going to throw it with a forehand throw. And the reason we do that is because when you bring it back, that's another thing that can go wrong. That's another thing that can get twisted. It's another thing that can actually throw off your straight line. Whereas if we start right here in the beginning, we throw it forward from the get-go, hopefully we're going to eliminate that one minor step that could actually throw your dice throw off. Now, years ago when I was practicing my martial arts, I actually ran into an individual who did a different style of martial art. And he was considered a national champion in the senior division. And one of the things that he did when he practiced his martial arts in order to perfect a move, in order to perfect his technique, was to try and do something 20 times in a row perfectly. And if he did that, what he found is that it became habit with him. So I'm going to incorporate that into the program here. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to throw the dice down without a wobble, and so they go square through the air. And we're going to try to do that with a stuck together dice 20 times perfectly before we move on further into the program. And if we could do that, what I find is that you're going to be able to make that a habit. You're going to be able to make that routine. You're going to be able to make it so that muscle memory takes over at the table and you can actually properly throw the dice every time that you try to do so. Now, once we get it down 20 times perfectly in a row, let's see if we can repeat that maybe 2 or 3 more sessions before we actually move on and we go to the single dice without the barrel rolled tape on there. And once we get to the single dice, the non-stuck together dice, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on keeping that wobble-free throw. We're going to focus on keeping that square throw and focus on trying to keep the dice stuck together or very closely together all the way down the table until they hit the tabletop. So there's 2 things that you can kind of watch for when you're throwing the dice on the yellow belt stage or yellow belt level. And that's when they come and they hit the table, and if they bounce together and then bounce out, chances are what happens is when you're doing your release, you're actually releasing your thumb too late and it's not rolling off your fingers like they should. So in other words, what happens is they actually split apart when they hit the table. So one way to correct that is to try to release the dice with your thumb a little bit sooner. So what happens is when they come off, they're actually going to roll off your fingertips easier and smoother and more straight. So now that we're practicing with our single dice, we're not using the barreled dice here. One of the things you're going to try to do is you're going to try to see how they land on a table. So we're throwing them on a table, they're going square through the air. When they land, they should land square and then roll straight up into the back wall. Again, we're not worried about landing zone. We're not worried about where they land on the wall. Right now, we're just ensuring that we have a square path and they're rotating. And when they hit, they're going to roll square in. One of the things that can happen is when they hit, sometimes they bounce into each other and they split apart. And one of the things that could be causing that is that when you throw the dice, you're actually releasing your fingers instead of your thumb. Because when you throw, your thumb is actually what should be releasing, and then they roll off your fingertips, and that's what keeps them squaring together. So if you're finding that when they hit the table, they split apart, make sure that you focus more on releasing with your thumb rather than your fingertips. The second thing that we could find that actually happens is when they go down, they land, and let's say they're just angled just a little bit, and when they hit, they actually throw off to the opposite direction. So let's say you throw it down the table, it lands, and then what happens is they both shoot to the left side. So what's happening there is that when you're throwing the dice, they're not landing square, but they're actually landing on the corners, and they'll go the opposite side of what corner hits. So if the right corner on the dice hits, they're going to fly to the left. Or if the left corner on the dice hits, they're going to fly off to the right. So that's the second thing that we can look for, and that'll show us if our dice are actually flying down the table, if they're actually going through the air and they're actually staying square and together. Is if they land, hit, and roll up, that's good. If they land and split apart, that's bad. We now know how to fix that. Or if they hit on one of the corners and they fly off to one direction, that we could fix as well, and that's just by squaring the dice off. The last thing we could do on the yellow belt level, and this is once we get comfortable with the throwing, we can get them to stick together, we can get them to land square and bounce properly. The next thing is to actually set the hard way set, so that's the 5-4-5-4 dice set, and throw it down the table. And our goal is to try to throw it down the table so that there is not a 6 or a 1 that appears on top when the dice come to rest. Because if that happens, what happened is that our dice imploded. So in other words, they went off of axis. But if we can get it to land on a 5, 4, 2, or 3, then that means that we stayed on axis and our dice stayed square throughout the entire throw. So in review of our yellow belt level, we're going to go through and we're going to go a minimum of 10 sessions. We're going to start each session off with the warm-up stretches that we did in white belt. We're going to set the dice, we're going to grip the dice 10 times each for both of them. We're also going to practice our drop test 5 times. And then we're going to move on to working on our current belt level stuff. And this is going to happen for each session that we actually do throw the dice. Once we get the barrel dice down so they're wobble free, we do that 20 times in a row perfectly, we can actually move to the dice that are not glued together, that are not taped together. And we can practice that. And then we're going to concentrate on how they're landing on a table. Not where they're landing, but how they're landing. Once you get that down, we can actually practice hard way set, and we're going to make sure that we can throw it down a table so that a 1 or a 6 do not appear on the top of the dice when they come to rest. Hey, if you're finding value in these videos, make sure that you give me that thumbs up. Also consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. To find out more about my dice shooting program, click on the video link in the right hand side there. My name is Joe, and this is my Craftsmaster Dice Shooting Program. Let's make it yours as well.